What happens when you take two really big sea creatures, an 80s pop icon, and a man whose best film was his very first, more than 40 years ago? It's Mega Monster Mayhem, and it starts right now on It Isn't That Bad. Welcome to It's Not That Bad, the podcast where we look for A grades in B movies. I'm your host, Jason. Welcome to the show. Let me explain what we're all about here on the show, because this is episode number 1, so we kind of have to get this out of the way. Our mission is to take some of the worst movies out there. You know, the ones where people sit there and go, oh my God, how did this get made? This is so bad. It's a dumpster fire, or worst movie ever. Well, you know what? We're going to take those movies and we're only going to say good things about it. Zero negativity in this podcast whatsoever. So that's the deal. Really bad movies, but we're going to find the silver linings in them. We're going to put a whole lot on the back burner. We're going to sit there and do our best to not talk trash about the movies that might be trash. And for this first episode, I've given myself a little bit of a tough one, because today's episode, we're looking at Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. I will admit, I full disclosure here, I love me a good B movie, especially if it's a good, B monster movie. I love the Toei Godzilla films. Like there's just something really wholesome about someone in a rubber suit stomping on little model towns. I don't know what it is. Call me weird. I've been called weird before on way too many occasions. I'll fly my freak flag on this one. Give me a monster movie any day. But here we have, in 2009, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. So if you've never even heard of this, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the description of the movie as written. Now, I watched this on Tubi. By the way, Tubi, great spot for free movies, especially if you like some movies that are of questionable quality, like this one. There's some good stuff on there. There's some other stuff on there too. So enjoy Tubi. It's great. But we're going to take the description from there, and it's time to trailerize it. Two prehistoric sea creatures, a mega shark and a giant octopus, fight to the death on the California coast. Who will reign supreme over the sea? Yeah, that might just be the most exciting thing about the movie. It's not the best movie, but it is what it is. So let's give you a little background on this. So it was released in 2009, and yes, it does star 80s pop icon Debbie Gibson and Lorenzo Lamas. It's made by a company called The Asylum. Now, if you've ever heard of The Asylum, I'm sorry, but if you haven't heard of The Asylum, what they're known for is what they themselves, I think, refer to as mockbusters. So when you think about, the movies that come out, like Pacific Rim comes out, they put out Atlantic Rim. Snakes on a Plane comes out, they put out Snakes on a Train. The mockbuster, it's basically one little tweak to the movie, and then they basically do their own version of it. Pure camp, even if it's unintentional. So, I mean, like, obviously this one, you have a big shark versus a big octopus. But this movie actually started to spawn its own cinematic universe, if you will, the Mega Shark verse, if you will, because this was the first of four Mega Shark movies. After this one, there was Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus. There was Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark, because if you have a big giant monster movie, you need to have a mecha of the same animal to go in there. That's just Godzilla Rule 101. And then Mega Shark versus Colossus. Now, Debbie Gibson didn't star in all of them. Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus starred Jaleel White. Yeah, Urkel versus the Giant Shark, which might have actually been a better movie title now that I come to think of it. But yeah, Urkel versus the Giant Shark. That was the second one. But Debbie Gibson, we're going to get to her in a little bit, but I mean, if you think about, her career, when she came onto the pop scene, like she was literally the biggest thing on the pop scene in the 80s. Only in My Dreams came out, Foolish Beat, Electric Youth, like Debbie Gibson was everywhere. It was Debbie Gibson and Tiffany, like as far as 80s pop went, throwing a little Martika while you're there. But then, after I think it was her third album, she kind of disappeared off the she was still making music, but not as prevalent because we were into the 90s, we were into grunge, so that was bye bye pop divas, right? So now she comes out with, and she did some acting beforehand, she did, true story. So aside from this one, there was a movie called My Girlfriend's Boyfriend, but there was also this little 1984 film. So even before, the Out of the Blue album came out, there was this little 1984 film that was set in New York City. And it was about four guys who got done up in coveralls and put these big backpacks on and chased ghosts around New York. Ghostbusters. Debbie Gibson is in Ghostbusters. Now, how did I know this? It's on IMDb. But, so there's the scene where Rick Moranis' character Lewis is being like chased around the Central Park, and he gets to the Tavern on the Green, and then he's up against the window, and he turns around, and then like the you see the dog, the demon dog growl, then he kind of slides down. So of all the patrons in the restaurant at that time, a young Debbie Gibson is actually at the restaurant. She was an extra on the film, according to IMDb. So there you go. So 3 years before, the debut album comes out, there's Debbie Gibson in New York watching Rick Moranis being eaten by a demon dog. Try explaining that one. But, aside from that. So Debbie Gibson's done quite a bit of acting. And I mentioned in the, in the teaser that, you had an actor whose biggest movie in his career was this first, almost 40 years ago. And that, of course, is Lorenzo Lamas. So what was that movie? That movie was Grease. He played Tom Chisholm in Grease. And, of course, Grease is, one of the pinnacles of movie musicals. He also appeared in Falcon Crest, and of course he was Jack Soldier Kelly in the Snake Eater movies. So, Lorenzo Lamas has had an acting career. Not necessarily the best acting career, but he's had an acting career. If you started Grease, where do you go? Apparently Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus is where you go. But see, the thing is, like with this movie, like as bad as it looked, people were interested in it. Like I remember when the trailer came out for this, watching this, and the CG doesn't necessarily hold up to, well, the CG doesn't even hold up to 2009 standards, but let's be honest, the CG doesn't necessarily hold up. But people watched that trailer. It was just so outlandish. Like the entire concept of having Debbie Gibson in a big CGI monster movie that looked as camp as it did. The trailer got watched so many times that year, 2009, Yahoo actually had that trailer listed in the top 10 movie trailers of that year based on views. At the time, it had more views than Avatar's trailer. That's how just widespread. When you think about, let me put it into perspective. Do you remember the first time you watched the video for What Does the Fox Say? And then you watched it again because you weren't quite sure what fever dream you were having because you watched What Does the Fox Say? And then you sent it to your friend saying, I've watched this twice. I'm not quite sure if I need to go to a hospital because I might be on something and I'm not quite sure about it. Please tell me I'm not hallucinating this video. That's how many times that video got watched. Same thing with this. You watched it again because you weren't quite sure. Then you called some friends over. You said, have you seen this? This is ridiculous. And you watch it with them, and then they give it to their friends, and they give it to their friends, and then they have to apologize to their friends for sending them that trailer. Like that's how big the trailer was at the time because it was just so camp. It was so camp, at least with some recognizable names. And the funny thing is, This was actually, now Asylum is known for putting their videos straight to DVD or straight to streaming, right? This was the first Asylum film to actually have a theatrical release. According to Box Office Mojo, this film was released in the UK in the theaters and earned a whopping $722. $722. Yeah, not the biggest, it's not Avatar. You think about all the movies that came out in 2009, I guarantee you that this is not on the top box office list, but it did get a theatrical release. And for a campy B movie like this, that is still a big deal. Now, you kind of know this has to be bad when the director changes their name on the credits. You've heard of the whole Alan Smithy thing, right? If a director wants to have their name taken off the credits, they change their name to Alan Smithy because that's the name that the Directors Guild had kind of assigned to if you don't want to, be associated with the film for whatever reason. Normally it's the director saying, yeah, like the studio was taken away, final cut from me, or the movie has changed so much in the edit that it's no longer their movie. That's when they pull their name and boom, there you go. It's no longer, it's still their directing, but it's not their name on it. So if you were to watch the movie and you didn't know this, you sit there and go, oh, Ace Hannah directed this. Ace Hannah doesn't exist. Jack Perez exists. Jack Perez actually did, this was one of two films that Jack Perez had directed for the Asylum. The other was 666, but he didn't call himself Ace Hannah for that one. Jack Perez is also known for directing Wild Things 2 and a movie, and I love the title of this movie, Some Guy Who Kills People. That is the name of a movie that Jack Perez directed. I need to see this film. Maybe we will do Some Guy Who Kills People on this podcast eventually, but for now, I am just like that is, that is, Hobo with a Shotgun level, snakes on a plane level movie titling. Some Guy Who Kills People. Open invitation, Jack Perez, if you want to come on the show and talk about Some Guy Who Kills People, I will happily talk Some Guy Who Kills People with you. I am madly curious about this film. But where does the name Ace Hannah comes from? Because it's not Alan Smithy. It's not Alan Smithy. Because Ace Hannah, the name Ace Hannah does exist. Because it was mentioned in the movie Veracruz. So Veracruz is, considered by some to be one of the first spaghetti western films. According to IMDb, it's considered one of the first spaghetti western films. But Ace Hannah never appears in the film. It's literally a throwaway reference by Burt Lancaster's character in the movie. Burt Lancaster's character is talking about this character, Ace Hannah, that basically helped shape, his character's, current situation. So Ace Hannah is a fictional character that never actually appeared in a movie. He is a throwaway reference, and now it's a throwaway name as far as directors go. How bad is this movie? How bad is this movie? So according to Rotten Tomatoes, all right, right now it's sitting at 18% on the tomato meter with a 20% audience score. So that's over 50,000 ratings on the audience score. Also, think about that. That means 50,000 people have watched this movie. 50,000 individual people have watched this movie and gone over to Rotten Tomatoes and rated it. And, 1/5 of them said it was good. So it can't be that bad. It's a 20% audience score. Can't be that bad. Can't be all that bad. So it's time to break this movie down. And how we do it on this show is we're going to take it piece by piece. We're going to look at the acting. We're going to look at the cinematography. We're going to look at the editing. Remember, no trash talk, right? We are literally here to point out the positives of quote unquote bad movies. Okay? We're not here to rip it. We're not here to trash it. We're here to actually point out what actually worked in the movie, because when you think about it, a lot of people put a lot of time into these movies. And anyone with a social media account or a podcast, whatever, can sit there and dump on these movies till the cows come home. But a lot of good people put a lot of work into these movies, and some of it's actually really good. So I went through, I watched this movie again. Not gonna lie, I did watch this movie when it first came out because it's Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, and as admitted before, I have an affinity for monster movies, B-rated monster movies. So watched it again. So let's start with the acting here, and of course, Deborah Gibson is the big star of the film. She's actually kind of enjoyable to watch in this. Like, take out the fact that she was an 80s pop star, because yeah, like that kind of the nostalgia factor kind of plays into it. I'm going to put this out there and you can laugh at me if you want. The first 2 cassettes that I ever got for myself as a Christmas gift. Okay. So, 2 different presents, one Christmas. One of the cassettes was Debbie Gibson's Out of the Blue. The other cassette was Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil. So got those. These were gifts. One person got it right. I'll let you decide which one it was. But 2 cassettes were given to me on the same Christmas. Debbie Gibson and Motley Crue Shout at the Devil. I like a lot of music. Let's put it that way. But you have to remember that the scripts in these movies are not exactly Shakespearean in nature. So, when you're sitting there and reading dialogue, like it's hard. Like, to go in and to read someone else's words, it's hard. It is, because more often than not, you don't sound like yourself. Now, if someone writes a script for you, period, they're probably writing it in their own voice because that's how they hear it in their head. And then someone else needs to take those words and make it sound naturally like them, or make it sound naturally like the character that they are playing. So that's tough. That could be really, really tough. And she actually does a decent job of making the most of the script that she's given. And, yes, there are parts of the film where, I think back to, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. First of all, prequel trilogy, Ewan McGregor shines. Absolutely shines. He's the best part of the prequel trilogy. But you think about Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and one of the biggest, kind of pushbacks on that film was the less than stellar dialogue between Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman during the whole courting scenes. And because cheesy, maybe, possibly, the dialogue. So yeah, there's a little bit of that in this movie. There's a little bit of cheesy, kind of, shoehorned in romantic storyline kind of dialogue. But aside from that, she's actually doing a decent enough job of working with the material given. So full credit to Debbie Gibson. One of the other actors in this is Sean Lawler. Now, if the name sounds familiar, but you can't really kind of place a face to it, go back and watch Braveheart. Sean Lawler played Malcolm Wallace in Braveheart. And this Mega Shark vs. Giant Octopus was actually one of the last movies that he was in before passing away. And he's just a treat in this film. Like, he, I can't really say that he lended a level of gravitas to the film because it is Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, but he came in, he didn't overplay it. He didn't try to chew up the scenery with camp or whatever. He came in and just provided that, I can't even say elder statesman. He just provided like a level of warmth and comfort to this elder scientist who's helping Debbie Gibson stop a mega shark and a giant octopus. I mean, I never thought I'd hear myself say that exact sentence in this lifetime, but here we are. But, he was a pleasure to watch. And the interesting thing is, when you had Debbie Gibson and Sean Lawler playing off of each other, they were actually at their best. If I'm making another Star Wars reference here, Mark Hamill in interviews previously talked about, learning from Sir Alec Guinness when they were working on the very first Star Wars film together. And you could almost see like just this camaraderie, just this comfort level between Lawler and Gibson and their characters on screen. So when you had these montages of the characters working together, mixing color liquids to try and figure out how to, get the shark and the octopus to fight each other. Spoiler alert, that's what happens. But when they're talking to each other, you really got this sense of a teacher and his prized pupil working together again. Like it was a very natural chemistry, on screen. And, those were actually really good parts of the film. The other actor that comes to mind, it's not Lorenzo Lamas, it's Vic Chow. Now, Vic Chow was in Ready Player One, and he was pretty good too. Like he didn't overcamp it. There were spots in it where, he's literally just, staring at the screen and, trying to say all this dialogue that, obviously if you hand the script to any sane person that sit there and go, I really have to say this, but, he played it well. He played it really well. And again, with the three of them working together, they all played off each other well. It wasn't camp. It wasn't camp. They seriously handled the montage scenes, the working together scenes, the talking to each other scenes. Those scenes played well together. So full credit to Debbie Gibson, Vic Chow, and the late Sean Lawler for bringing a level of normalcy to a CGI monster B movie. Full kudos. One of the other things that I love to look at is the cinematography in a film, and the set design as well. So looking at some of this now, a lot of this was shot on sets that were designed to look like control rooms, submarine interiors. But every now and then, they got on location, and whoever scouted out some of the locations did a really good job. They did actually a really, really good job. There's one scene early on in the film where the shark and the giant octopus have just been thawed out or released from their iceberg, Captain America like frozen in carbonite type living, and then the giant octopus, I guess, runs afoul of an oil drilling platform in the middle of the sea. So obviously they're not going to a proper oil drilling platform, but wherever they were, and I'm not quite sure what building they were at, but wherever they were, it was a really good location for that scene. Until, of course, the CGI octopus arms comes out and shakes everything. But there was a lot of good set location scouting in this film. And to the same token as well, when they were actually in set, they didn't just put up these dark rooms and said, let's go with it. Whoever did the lighting for all of the interior sets, especially the submarine interior, quote unquote, they did a really good job of using a lot of color lighting, not overly so. And in some cases, there was a little bit of overkill, but for the most part, the subtle lighting that they put in there to at least bring some vibrancy to what would normally be a flat, dead set scene, there was a lot of good lighting work in this. Like a lot of good lighting work to the point of, it could have looked bad. It could have looked really bad and really chaz, but it didn't. It looked vibrant. It was full of life. So to the location set crew or the location scouting crew and to the lighting design crew, like chef's kiss, bravo. You actually brought a lot of life to Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. Congratulations. Now, I mentioned the CGI earlier on, and that maybe it wasn't the best part of the film, but We talked about the trailer. We talked about how many times that trailer was watched. And one of the scenes in that trailer is one of those scenes where, if you, admittedly, you've got to love B movies. You have to love B movies to be able to appreciate this. But there's this scene where there's a passenger jet, like 747 style plane that's flying over the water. And the mega shark jumps out and attacks the plane. It's such a camp scene. It's so B movie. But if you don't smile while you're watching this, it's just, you see that scene and go, I'm sold. I need to watch this based on that scene alone. It's so out there that it probably drew in more viewers than some of the dialogue in the trailer. So, kudos for making the absurd work for you. I do have to point out something though, when it comes to post-production. See, when it comes to films, obviously there's a lot of sound effects and whatnot that are put in post in order to be able to, audibly bring life to a scene. So near the end of the film, when the mega shark and the giant octopus are fighting each other, and they do these underwater CGI scenes of the octopus, their idea of sound effects was this slurping straw type sound. Like literally, the octopus would move, and all you hear would be. That was the sound effect that they thought gave the giant octopus its. I can't even. I literally cannot even. It sounds like someone put a thing of Jello onto the microphone, grabbed a straw, and that's the giant octopus. We're gonna use that. When you go to watch this movie, because I hope that you do, make sure your volume is turned up and try to not hear that now. I'm sorry, not sorry, but it's out there now. Now you have to kind of go with it. But when it comes to the sound of this film, the MVP of this movie, the absolute MVP of Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, is Chris Ridenour. Well, who is Chris Ridenour, you say? Chris Ridenour is the music composer for Mega Shark vs. Giant Octopus. He's worked on a number of Asylum films as well. The score for this film is actually really good. It is. It is quality music all the way through. It brought life. It wasn't distracting. It wasn't, it didn't stand out as being stock music. Chris Ridenour did a phenomenal job of scoring this film, of creating music to help bring to life this quote unquote masterpiece. So Chris Ridenour, congratulations. You are the absolute Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus MVP, and however much the Asylum paid you, I hope they listen to this and double it and give you more money. Chris Ridenour, congratulations. You made this movie so much better. I cannot stress how important music is to a film. I'm going to make the third Star Wars reference right now in a podcast episode about Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. When the first Star Wars came out, it's 1977. Disco is huge. It's all over the place. And a lot of movies were using disco as their soundtrack. Star Wars went the other way. Star Wars got John Williams, came in, made one of the most iconic scores in movie history. And made Star Wars, instead of a space opera type, I know Star Wars kind of came first, but Battlestar Galactica kind of thing, but took it from one level and brought it to that next. If you weren't walking out of the theaters when you saw Star Wars and humming the music from John Williams' score, you weren't listening properly. Chris Ridenour, while maybe, not John Williams level scoring, it's it's hard because Star Wars was a good film, right? John Williams just made it that much better. Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus is a film. Chris Ridenour brought his A game to the score of this film, and the music actually makes a lot of the scenes enjoyable. Even when you know they're just using stock footage of scenery and whatnot, or the monster fight scenes in the water, there's good music through this whole thing. So bravo, Chris Ridenour, MVP. And that is all the good points of Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. Go watch the film. The funny thing about watching B movies is that it makes you not just appreciate, the good movies that are out there, but it also makes you appreciate just the art of filmmaking. You can have good movies side by side with less than good movies, and all the work that these people put into these films, it should be applauded. It doesn't necessarily need to be appreciated, but it should be applauded that they have created something that for an hour and a half they have entertained and made your day that much brighter. Because even if you didn't like the film, even if you thought the film was less than stellar, you still walked away with something to talk about. And for an hour and a half, you got to, not worry about your worries for a day. So there you go. Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, actually making the world a better place. So go watch the film. You can actually watch it on Tubi right now. Go watch it. Go watch all the other Mega Shark movies. Just enjoy it. Go in there with zero expectations. Go in there, you're not expecting, you're not expecting Braveheart. You're not expecting, Ice Spartacus. It's Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. Go in there with those expectations. So that is the first episode of It's Not That Bad. Because really, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, it's not that bad. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode. Thank you for tuning into the show. I hope you really enjoy it. Every episode is going to be a new movie. We're going to have some guests on as well. If you have a movie that you think I can't find something good out of it, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter at NotThatBadCast, and be sure to listen to my other podcast, Made You a Mixtape. You can find all these podcasts, this one and that one, wherever you get your podcasts, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Good Pods, Podchaser, you name it, we're there. So thank you so much. Hope you tune in for the next time. Hit me up on Twitter, and hey, grab some popcorn and go enjoy the movies. Take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, Skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.